Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Google Forms, and you can see here that I'm in a blank window, and I'm in this window so that I can start from scratch and show you how to get on and create a Google form. Now, one thing I need to make sure is clear within our NKU community is that there are kind of a couple different ways that you can get to Google Forms. The first is using any public Google account that you already have. You can certainly make forms through that. The second way is if you are using the NKU Google Workspace account, and things will look slightly different if you're using that. Either can be used. So I want to make that clear. If you have a regular Gmail account or a Google account, you can use that. If you want to use your NKU email to access the Google Workspace suite of tools, you can do that too. And that's what I'm going to do here just to show you the differences. So from any window, you're going to type drive.google.com. This is going to take us to the Google Workspace area that you have access to. Now it's going to take us here, and it's going to ask you to log in a second here. So we're going to click Go to Drive. It's going to ask you to log in. So for this example, I'm going to use my NKU username, actually email address, and choose next. Now what's going to happen is it's going to see that I'm an NKU user and ask me to sign in with my regular NKU account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. This is the same thing you use whenever you log into NKU. Now when I get there, you're going to see I'm now in Google Drive. Google Drive is the cloud space associated with Google Workspace, and anything can be saved in here just like in OneDrive, and you can create things in here as well. For example, if I click on New over here, you're going to see that I have several things that I can put inside of this space. Today we're going to focus on Google Forms, but before I click on that, I just want to show you that up here in the upper right hand corner you can see my Google Drive, what I'm logged into, which is actually my NKU account. You can see that because the logo is right there. If you, again, have a Gmail account that you use for your personal life, then you may see that in the upper right-hand corner. If you don't see the NKU logo, you're in your personal account. You can certainly change accounts by clicking on this logo, and you can come and sign into another account if you choose to. But again, I want to make sure that's clear that you have one associated with your NKU account, but if you regularly use a public Gmail account, you may see that in the upper right-hand corner when you go to your Google Drive. Again, for this example, I'm showing you the NKU login. From here, again, I'm going to click on Google Forms and show you a few things here. Now, when you get to Google Forms, you're going to see that we have several things we're looking at here. We want to title this form, give it a title here. We'll actually change the name up here too, a form description, and then we'll see we can start our questions here as well. So let me go ahead and give this a name and a description. Okay, now what I did here is I gave it a name and I gave it a description. By clicking just up here on the name, it took whatever I had here and renamed it up here to match. All of these are being saved inside of that Drive area that we mentioned before, and you don't have to save things manually. Now when we come down here, you can see that we have an untitled question. If I click inside this area, you'll see several more options pop up. The first is a space to actually add the question and the options, but I want to make sure you understand over here are all of your question types, most of which I think will look very familiar to any other survey type of thing you've put together before. Short answer and paragraph, multiple choice checkbox dropdown, and some other options. Linear, think of kind of a Likert scale, and then a couple of other grid options as well. So for this example, we're going to first choose multiple choice. So we might ask the question, okay, so maybe we're asking them if they are freshmen, sophomore, junior, and senior, and maybe we're only sending this out to undergrads. Or we could have asked if they were undergrad or graduate. The idea behind a multiple choice is that there really is just one answer that they can choose for this. I'll show you another example in a second where they can choose more than one. But this is meant to be the type of question where there is one answer to it. You also have an other here option that you could certainly add in if there's a reason for that. The one thing to keep in mind when you add in an other is that data mining gets a little more complicated because you have to rely on people to spell things correctly, use correct capital or lowercase letters if that matters. So it's best if you can to think of all the options that they would need and include them there manually. You have an option down here if you want to have the question be required or not. If your data really depends on people answering this question, you're going to want to make that required. So I'll go ahead and just click that on. This is literally a toggle of on or off. You can duplicate a question. You can delete a question as well. Okay, so once we're done here, we've got another option over here on the right where we can add a question in. There's some other options that is probably worth mentioning here. Here's an import question, which literally allows you to bring in questions that you may have used in another Google form, so that's handy. You can add in a title or a description, an image, a video, and section breaks. In this case, I'm going to add in a new question. So let's say our question here is, what activities are you involved in on campus? All right, so this is meant to be more of a choose all that apply. So in that case, we actually want the check boxes. So I want to make this really clear that this is meant to be just one answer. This is meant to allow for multiple answers. And I actually usually suggest that you type in here, choose all that apply. So people know for sure that they are allowed to choose more than one answer. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some options here just to get us started. Okay, I added in a few things. This is absolutely not an exhaustive list, just a few things that came to mind. I could also certainly add in an other here because no matter how many things you come up with, there are probably going to be a few things that you didn't think of. So again, this is meant to be choose all the things that they're involved with. I just want to mention here too, you can add an image in here. We could add in the NKU logo or something if you chose to do that. All right, so if I come down, we have our same options that we had before. I'll add in one more question. And I will make this one a linear scale. And when I do that, my options here will allow me to choose what my range is. In this case, it's 1 to 5. I could make that all the way up to 10. I'll go ahead and leave 1 to 5. And I'll ask a question. How would you rate your enjoyment of campus life? I would say not at all enjoyable, very enjoyable. Okay, and obviously this could be anything you want it to be. But I wanted you to see what this question, how it kind of looks. And again, we can require it, we can duplicate it, and so on and so forth. All right, so we have 3 questions, and certainly you could add as many as you would like for this. When I come up here, I want to show you a couple other things before we get ready to look at settings and sending it out and so on. Okay, the first thing I want to show you is this option up here that says customize theme. This is pretty neat. When you click this, you can change some color options. So right now our theme is purple, but maybe I want it to be green, or maybe I actually want to add in a header, which will also change the colors associated with it. So let's say I choose an image, and you can see we have different themes over here on the right, and we have some options within each theme. You can also upload your own. So if I scroll down here, I'll try to find something that's appropriate for us, or at least matches what we're doing. Let's do this one. All right, and I'll go ahead and insert this in. Now, when I do that, it's not only going to add in a banner, but it's going to change some of the colors, and I can continue to change those colors right here. Okay, the next thing you'll see up at the top here is a preview link. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. The next one over says settings, and I'll go ahead and click on that. Now you'll see we have 3 categories here: general, presentation, and quizzes. General has several things in here, asking if you want to collect emails from your users as they create, or rather take your survey. You'll also see how many you want, if you want to limit responses to just one, what respondents can do after they're done with the survey. And then this one right here This you will see if you are using your NKU account to create a form. You will not see that if you're using a public account. So it really depends on which one you're using. And this is just an extra layer of security. If you are working within an organization, in this case NKU, you can restrict this to only users in that organization. And many schools use this. Under presentation, you can see you can give students the option to see a progress bar. You can shuffle the questions. That's probably maybe a little more applicable if you're creating a quiz out of this instead of a survey. You can show the link to submit another response or not, so maybe we take that away. And your confirmation message, meaning when you're done with your survey, what message do you see? So we might just change this to, thanks for completing our survey. Goodness. Okay, there we go. And that will be, I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Just a note over here on quizzes, if you create a quiz out of this instead of a survey, there are lots of different options you can see here, including one cool thing that you can use if students are on Chromebooks, locked mode, where they can't open tabs or other applications while taking the quiz, which is kind of neat. A few other options down here about what respondents can see after their quiz. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here, and I'm going to come back to this preview so you can see what this will look like completed. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to preview. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take the survey and say that I'm a junior and I'm involved in these pieces here, and I'm going to give this a 4 and submit. So there's that message that we typed in for what we wanted them to see after the survey was done. We unchecked to allow them to create a second survey response. That link would have been right here if we hadn't gotten rid of that. I'm going to do this one more time so that we have 2 surveys to take a look at responses for us. Let me do that now. All right, I'm going to come back to my survey, and I want you to see that I now have 2 responses up here. So let's take a look at that. If I take a look at this and people have already responded to my survey, then you can see we have 3 categories: summary, question, and individual. So I'll show you summary first. This is big picture. How did people respond to our survey? So 50% said senior, 50% said junior. Coming down a little bit, you can see 2 people said cross country, 1 said each of the others that are marked. And then 1 person said they rated it a 4 and 1 rated it a 5. Now, if you wanted to go question by question and just look at the individual responses of the question, you can do that here. You can choose your question here that you want to take a look at. Or you can look at the individual that filled out the survey and look at 1. So you can see we have 2 individuals. The first individual was a junior. They chose this, and this was their answer to campus life. I can move on to the second respondent and see what they had to say. So 3 different ways to look at your responses. The other neat thing you can do is you can actually create a spreadsheet to look at this data. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's going to ask me if I want to select a existing spreadsheet or create a new one. I'm going to say create a new one, and it's going to open up for me a spreadsheet that has all of the data included in here. And this is helpful for different kinds of data mining that you're doing, depending on what you're looking for. So that's helpful as well. If we come back, you can see that we can also turn off responses so that you're not accepting any new responses. There's also some options underneath here where we can choose to unlink the form, download the responses as a CSV, or print or delete all the responses as well. All right, so let's say we've got this set up, and actually I might want to do that here, delete all the responses since I've been playing around with it. So let's say I did that. I didn't, but let's say I did, and I want to send this out to folks. You might be tempted to just take this big long URL and send it, but that is the author URL. You need to send out the I want you to take this survey type of URL. So what you're going to do is you're going to click send up here in the upper right hand corner, and you're going to see that we have 3 ways to send out a survey. You have a email where you could put in email addresses. You could do a link, or you could embed this. We're going to stick with link for this because this gives us a little bit of flexibility as to how we pass it out to folks. The other thing I want to show you that I really recommend is this shorten URL. Look how long that is. If I shorten it to this, you can see that it obviously becomes much shorter. I can copy this and then I can put that in an email. I can put that on a learning management system like Google Classroom or Canvas or anything like that. I could also put that onto a web page. Anything I wanted, I could put that link onto it. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this and just show you that if I open a new window and paste, there's that form URL that I just copied, and that's going to be my my form that people could take. So to come back here, let me just recap for you that this is Google Forms. It allows you to create questions to send out when you're done with your questions, and there's a variety of options for questions. You can then change the theme, you can preview it, you can change some of the settings, and you can send it out to others. Once you've gotten your responses, you can take a look at those through summary, question, or individual, and you can choose to stop accepting responses or continue to accept them. You can look at it via spreadsheet, and we have a few other options on here as well. Again, I want to make this clear. If you are using an organization account, like in this case NKU, some of these options underneath settings will look different. If you're using a public Google account, then those options won't be there. So just understand that there are really two ways that this could look for you. Before we wrap this up, I just want to show you one other thing. Everything that we have done inside of here is stored back on your Google Drive. So if I click back over onto Google Drive, you're going to see that I have a tutorial practice form. Just as a reminder, that's what we called it. And a tutorial practice form responses, that sheet that held our responses. So to get back into either of those, you would just double click on here to open it up. So again, this was Google Forms. This is a really powerful tool to allow you to create surveys or quizzes that you might want to share with others.